The next one on actually is a high school student who has done something pretty revolutionizing in the world of wildfire prevention with AI. Welcome, Siddharth.
Hi, I'm Siddhartha, and I'm a high schooler in the Bay Area. I'm excited to present SmokeSignal, which is an application that I've been working on that uses AI to mitigate wildfire, and to talk about my background, and how I became excited and introduced into space. So I've grown up in the Bay Area for a large portion of my life, and throughout my childhood, I can vividly remember bright orange skies, because the sun was blotted out from smoke. I'd missed weeks of school because of this. My friends, my teachers had lost their homes, and so wildfires have always been a major disruptor or factor that played a role in my childhood. As I became older, I began to do more research, and I learned that wildfires are pervasive and global. They're a major contributor to climate change. In fact, they emit 10% of emissions globally. They kill over 1.5 million people annually due to direct effects and also pollution, and they burn about 3.7 million square acres a year, which is an area the size of India geographically. This left me strongly passionate about wildfires, and as I entered the sixth grade, I began to gain exposure to the field of computer science. So, using internet resources and YouTube, I began to learn how to code and build simple artificial models like convolutional neural networks. And as I became more involved, I learned more techniques, and I slowly began to build out a wildfire detection model. Traditional wildfire detection is reliant on either human oversight of trail cameras, which is incredibly expensive and is not possible for a lot of communities who cannot afford to allocate a person to that role, or it is reliant on complex hardware that costs thousands of dollars. For example, current market solutions average about $7,000 a unit and only have a coverage of about 4 miles, meaning that communities in rural areas with lots of land coverage requirements are forced to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on wildfire detection a year. Finally, the other avenue for wildfire detection, satellites, have massive delays and are often covered by clouds in about 60% of cases. So the model that I built uses smartphone images, and trail cameras, and it has an AI overlay that is able to detect with 97% accuracy whether or not smoke from a nascent fire is present. As I began to build out this model, I learned more techniques, and then I began to work on wildfire spread prediction. Traditional wildfire containment relies on circling a fire, but this spreads resources inefficiently, and it means that firefighters are often unable to contain the head of a fire where the fire is spreading. So I began to build this prediction model to diagram where fire will spread over the course of 24 hours. I used a random forest algorithm and also K nearest neighbors, as well as other convolutional neural networks in order to build out this model using over 11 environmental variables. Throughout this process, I was able to learn about earth sciences, about the interaction between these variables, and as I conducted more and more tests, I realized that complex natural and ecological phenomenon, like the spread of wildfires, are influenced by a variety of factors that are not foreseeable for humans. As I began to conduct these analysis and I began to draw these charts that predicted where fire spread, I realized this is not work that humans could do absent the assistance of tools like technology. So now, as I'm introducing these tools to fire departments, I've been able to demonstrate how artificial intelligence is able to predict where fire will spread with over 95% accuracy and how it is able to diagram a fire spread over that course of time. Um, Through internal testing against past fires like the glass fire and the salt fire, I've also been able to confirm the accuracy of these tools to see how, in the past, application of artificial intelligence could have contained these fires before they burned hundreds of thousands of acres. And I think that there are a lot of challenges present to innovation in the status quo with legal barriers to technological adaptation and limits on data. But I think that my experience in artificial intelligence and my ability to build these data sets, and these artificial algorithms has taught me an important lesson, which is that in today's age where so much information is publicly available, there are ways for people to use artificial intelligence for good. And I think that this brings me to my main conclusion, which is that artificial intelligence is truly necessary in order to tackle emerging crises throughout the world. In my case, it was wildfires, where I was able to apply artificial intelligence to understand the ecological factors that lead to the spread of wildfires in order to better detect those fires. But I think across a host of crises that are facing the globe, like, for example, hurricanes, there are places where young people and artificial intelligence can come together and make a difference. And I'd love to answer any questions, and I'd love to speak more about that now.
Siddharth, there's a question that I wanted to, I'll just read it out to you. Can this kind of technology, do you see it being used in any other naturally occurring problem that you can extrapolate these skills that you have to that technology?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of work being done, for example, in the United States in Texas, that looks at applying artificial intelligence to other natural disasters. A lot of studies have emerged that look at that look at predicting hurricane spread, or hurricane movement using artificial intelligence. Because AI is incredibly adept at pattern recognition, it's able to look at past hurricanes and weather data, and it's able to make a conclusion that it would be incredibly difficult for humans using these millions and millions of historical instances and these hours of pattern recognition training, and is able to quickly and almost instantly make a decision about where a hurricane will spread and how to best evacuate the populations in the area. Similarly, when you look at tidal patterns and floods, there's a lot of research going on about how to build flood resilience and how to determine which populations will be the most affected by floods as they emerge. And all these things are not possible for humans, but are possible for artificial intelligence models that have these millions of pieces of information that they're able to draw upon in a short time frame.
Thanks, Siddharth. One last question. I'll give you a quick time to answer it. What has been your biggest challenge in this process?
I think my biggest challenge has been gaining access to certain information. So artificial intelligence is very data intensive. In order to build a tool that is reliable and is able to address a specific issue, you need a very large data set. For example, the data set or the algorithm that I built that predicts for fire spread, it used over 1 million historical instances of wildfire spread. And gaining access to this data can be a very large barrier. In the current political climate, for example, there's a lot of partisanship around issues like climate change, and this is making access to that data in a transparent manner very difficultly. And so I think that if there's one thing that people should focus on in order to enable young people like me to gain access to the tools to build artificial intelligence, it is democratizing access to that data so that people of all ages with all kinds of experience and levels of access are able to experiment and build their artificial intelligence tools.
Great. There are some more questions coming. Siddharth, if you don't mind, I can ask you one or two more.
Yeah,
Uh, how have you found the fire departments in terms of working with you? Have they been responsive to your suggestions and collaboration?
so I think there's certainly a challenge presented by the fact that I'm still a high schooler. It makes me a lot less credible to government agencies, for example. But I think that I have a great network of support. For example, as I began learning how to test artificial intelligence, I met a professor at the school of Stanford named Derek Fong, who was able to connect me with a lot of incredible people in the wildfire space. Additionally, I'm on the board of the Santa Clara Fire Safe Council, which has enabled me to gain access to fire departments at a level that I don't think most high schoolers might be able to. And so, because of these connections that I've been able to build and the mentorship that I've received, I found that I'm able to work with fire departments in a manner that is more equal than paternalistic. But I do think that there is certainly a barrier to adoption in fire departments in that there is a lot of stagnancy. Um, there are a lot of there's a lot of blue tape and there's a lot of dependency on current systems. And so when encouraging fire departments to look at new solutions using artificial intelligence, especially as a high schooler, it does take a lot of effort. But for example, over the past few weeks, I had begun testing with the Santa Clara Fire Council in the fire district, and I found that there are a lot of people who are very responsive and very supportive, especially because I've been so incredibly supported by mentors.
Wonderful. Thank you, Siddharth. I know we are kind of over time. Do you just want to quickly tell us if you're doing any other educational or community-based initiatives as part of Smoke Signal?
Yeah. So through Smoke Signal, I've also been leading um, at school. I've been leading a lot of climate advocacy through letter writing campaigns and speaker events. And outside of this, I'm organizing a tree planting project across the country through BAPS Charities, which is a 501(c)(3). And then finally, I'm working with the Moakama Ohlone and different indigenous groups to learn how we can better communicate their holistic ecological management practices because there's an untapped well of knowledge in those communities that has incredible application for ecological management today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for your time and the work that you're doing. You remind us that the future is so bright. So thank you again.
And
Uh,
thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
you're very welcome.